All right. Thank you for joining us here at Tyrant Slayer Studios. We've got a lot to talk about, and we're going to try to do this as quickly as possible. We don't want this running too long. We're going to put about maybe 35, 40 minutes into it. A lengthy video kind of scares people away, so we're going to try to move it fast. We're going to be joined this evening by a Miss Victoria Eloise. She's a wonderful 33-year-old, highly intelligent in the greater Hartford area. She attended school in Yukon, and then even the University of Hartford for graduate school. She's always been a bit of a truther, if you will, a self-identified truther, but never a corruption finder or watchdog, so to speak. Basically, her engagement and investigating and publications have all started back in February of this year, after 18 months of really criminal treatment by state Medicaid doctors. And she was witnessing violations of the law right in front of her. And despite her efforts to report these law violations through the recommended state and federal channels, no one would help or even simply respond. So she basically laid down her options, which were one of two things. She had a couple of options here. She could either submit and roll over like many Americans do these days, or she could rage against the machine. And this tough cookie here chose the latter. And the last set of doctors that she saw were at Yukon and had never seen anything like the level of law breaking that we're all witnessing here today. So without further ado, we are going to give you Miss Victoria Eloise.
Hello.
All right. And
thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Your work is absolutely phenomenal. You're a very active and participating member on Tyrant Slayer Studios Facebook page and a number of other groups on Facebook, like Open Up Connecticut, Citizens Against Ned LaMont, or I might get some of these page names wrong. There's so many of them that you're active on. It's really hard to keep up with your due diligence, but I do my best over here, and we've been thoroughly impressed with your insight and your analysis. So thank you for joining us.
You're making me blush over here. It's so funny to be in so many groups. Because, before the groups, I had a friend that I knew in high school who was like, you should join some groups and see if your posts get traction. And so it started with one. It was Open CT Now, and then it was another, and then people were inviting me to groups, which I think is the best compliment when I get like a group invite. So now it's a bunch of them, and it's cool. It's really cool to be a part of something bigger,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, your work is very impartial. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not left-leaning. It's not right-leaning. It's more or less just raw data for people to look at and decide for themselves, what to do with it, or what can we as a collective do about these things. I am just going to kind of fire from the hip here, bring up some of your posts on our Facebook page, and you can talk a little bit about what you have here for the people. Let's see. So here's one from, let's see when this was done, November 4th. Let's see what this has to do with. This is, can you tell us a little bit about this and why you feel like this was important to share with the public, and what the premise behind it is? It's coupled with a number of other photos.
Yes. Okay. First,
let's start right here.
So this one is, I admit I've definitely been more right leaning like over the past week, 2 weeks, because of the election, and then I got real fired up after things started to get crazy in this election. So my stuff is definitely more rightish recently, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's just facts. So this post in particular, it's so funny. On election day, I do my thing, got my mask on, which I wasn't happy about, but I did it. And, as they do, they hand you the pen and you go off to your wherever and you fill it out. And I remember opening the cap and thinking, I never used a Sharpie before, but didn't think anything of it. So, and then I have another friend in high school, Trinity. She moved to Arizona recently, like about a year ago. And she sent me the video one of the videos that I posted. There was those two ladies and gentlemen who were talking about how in Arizona, the ballots, they're bleeding through and it's impacting, the Sharpies are bleeding through and it's impacting.
Right. The machines are having a hard time reading these ballots. Some machines, not all machines, but some machines. And it seems as though from the reports I've read that these machines are in the swing states.
Yes, always. And so, I did a little bit of research on, okay, what's the deal with these pens? What's the deal with Sharpies? Is there something to that? And, I started looking in past years because anything you find in 2020, even 2019 is tainted because it's so recent. So I look back to the previous election, 2016, and there's all these little publications from states saying, I found one from Arizona, I found one from Michigan, I found one from Ohio here. This could be Oregon, excuse me. And This is right from the county government website that says, use lacquer blue ink, not felt tip pens.
Yeah, I see that right there on the screen. It says right there on the right-hand side in your comment section, you can see that. We're looking at that report right there.
They say felt tip pens and markers can bleed through the paper and cause unintended marks on the opposite side of the ballot. And so for them, there was even another one that was from Arizona, from the Secretary of State on October 1st, 2020. And she's right on the website. It says, no markers, no Sharpies. And then all this happens. So, I think it's really important to, when I make a claim or when someone makes a claim, having, it's one thing to share a video. Those are so important and great, but having those other bits of evidence, they're really helpful. And it's just
critical information. It's critical information that's required for the public to review. It needs to be disseminated, to the entire populace, and people need to have that stuff tangible and readily available so that they can actually draw their own conclusions and see for themselves what's going on rather than taking it from mainstream media at face value.
And what's the most bananas about, it makes perfect sense looking back, but some people might say, well, everybody got felt tip pen, everybody used Sharpies, so what are they going to do, invalidate the whole election? No, because if they handed out Sharpies and felt tip pens in Trump country, like in Trump, counties packed with Trump supporters,
it seems conspiratorial, if you ask me. It absolutely does. And I've been talking to hundreds of Connecticut voters, and it absolutely does seem to correlate with Trump-dominated towns where there's massive support for Donald Trump. All of these people are reporting to me that they've been issued felt tip pens or markers, Sharpies, and everywhere else people are saying, we had ballpoint pens, and they let us take them home. And evidently, one of the a gentleman from Vernon told me that he was actually told he brought his own pen, and he was told by the poll station worker that he could not use his own pen, and if he refused to use the marker that was tied to the table, that he wouldn't be able to vote and he would have to leave.
Oh, oh. Wow.
Yeah, that's a very big deal. There's been a number of reports that have come out today regarding Pennsylvania. I don't know if you saw Giuliani talking today and the 60 witnesses he had behind him. And yeah, Monday's going to be a very big day in regard to this election. And
oh, yeah. You know, I mean, it's like they think we're stupid, but we're the smart ones. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll jump into this video real quick. I didn't mean to kind of cut you off. Yeah, we'll jump into this. This is a report. Let's see. I'm not sure where this is coming out of. Maybe we'll find out as we play it. Well, let's take a look.
Arizona.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Let's take a look.
Two people in front of me that used a Sharpie.
Yes.
That was given to them by the poll workers.
Yes.
It did not read their ballot.
Okay.
And it slid in there twice. I used a pen.
Yep.
Took their Sharpie and threw it away.
And it read your ballot.
And it read my ballot.
And it read your ballot.
And it read my
so
ballot.
What they're doing is they're telling people to use the Sharpies. That way,
yes,
those votes aren't counted.
Yes.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yes.
So there was other people that were in there voting with their pens, and they literally went around and they were yanking pens out of their hands.
Yes. They tried to do that to me, and I took their Sharpie and I hid it because then they said, look for all the Sharpies that are not being used and take the Sharpies back. They had a bowl of pens behind them that they were not giving to people and only giving Sharpies out.
There we go. So the ones with the Sharpies are not being read at all.
No.
No. None of those ballots are being read.
Of course not.
So that's again, and so they're doing it because they're trying to skew all of the votes in there.
And they
that's exactly what's going on.
They didn't even slide it more than one time. They immediately took it and slid it in the front, like not even tried a second time. They just
that's correct.
Ran it through and slid it in the front, and I was like, wait a second.
That's what they did with yours?
Yep, and I just went with a Sharpie, voted Trump, and she just slid it in, and that was it.
But they're not counting. They're not counting the ones with the Sharpies. And so they're forcing people to use the Sharpies, and those votes aren't being counted.
Right.
That's what's going on.
Right. And then I posted it on my Facebook group chat in my neighborhood. They said they did it at the Queen Creek Library. They did it at ASU Polytech earlier. They're like 4 different polling places were doing Sharpies, all in, like, between Queen Creek and, like, the edge of Gilbert.
Yep. And those ones are not being counted.
Yes.
They're invalid.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
like, I have proof.
So they're invalidating votes is what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
That's how
I
it
took a
feels
picture
like.
of my
Okay.
ballot for
And then
Trump.
there was a guy that directly came out and yelled at me 3 times. They both came out.
Oh, no, they called the sheriffs and said that, and told us to stop handing out the ballpoint pens, in which case, those are the only ones that are actually being counted and validated.
I used your pen, and then I
Yeah.
sent it back to you, and I
And
said,
they're-
give this to somebody. 'Cause
Yes, yes. And so we know that, and we've been telling.
Wow.
Banana.
Yeah, that is absolutely outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous. Now, this has been going on in all of the swing states, as far as I know.
You know, I also thought it was so interesting. So, like, I saw this. I think it was either election night or the night after, and so then I started digging. What's the deal with Sharpies? And the amount of fake news media that there was dozens of articles claiming that this was false.
Correct. I saw it. WTNH, I think that's a local network here in Connecticut, put out a bogus story like that, despite what officials are saying.
And no investigation. You know, they hadn't investigated. It was like they were ready to say this was false.
It's damage control. Damage control, as far as I could tell.
Absolutely.
So let's see what else we can take a look at here. Absentee ballots in Wisconsin. Do you want to comment on anything in particular? Or is a particular story on any?
These you mean in general?
Yeah.
So I would say, and I posted a bunch of videos today, but it's not, of course, the Sharpies cause issues, but it's not necessarily the machine themselves. It's voter registration fraud. So all of these mix matches of rules and deadlines and who is allowed to vote, who's not. We have people who've passed away who have voted. We have people who.
Yeah, Will Smith's father allegedly voted in.
Yes.
Yeah, Will Smith's father and the old boxer. I can't remember the boxer's name, but yeah, there are dead people voting in Pennsylvania, and I guess Pennsylvania's got one of the worst records for fraud.
Actually, that's something. If you wanna take, there's a post that is. Let me get you the date. It's not too far from the top. It's about Pennsylvania and their history of fraud. It's quite recent. Bear with me. It's going to be.
Yeah, take your time. Put the link right in the chat here in your window if you have the chat in your StreamYard. If you throw the link to whatever you want me to put up, I'll go ahead and grab the link and throw it on the screen for you. Just bear with us, folks. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Victoria Eloise. She is a remarkable guru of information. And she's doing her due diligence to try and bring trust back into our election process. And she's helping us analyze the potential problems and bringing to light the very real problems in this election cycle and even in the past. I just think in this particular election, fraud is more rampant than ever, and it leaves us kind of high and dry going forward. I mean, what would you say this sort of scenario in this year's election means going forward? If we do not seek some sort of legal recourse or expose these problems and deal with them and find solutions for them, I mean, aren't we essentially screwed as Americans? What does that mean for the republic going forward, in your opinion?
And it's so much bigger than just Biden, because all of the corruption that all of us have uncovered and been trying to get the word out about, it's not going to matter. It does matter, but for the man at the top for a president to openly engage corruption like the Bidens, the big stuff, like the stuff involving our governor and his wife, that's not going to go anywhere, especially with, Anne Lamont's business partner running the coronavirus task force.
Right. We definitely need to talk about our tyrannical governor here before we depart, and after we kind of go over this election stuff. We definitely need to touch on our lawless criminal governor. I don't know if you've heard, just briefly to touch on him. It is my understanding, I haven't proven it yet, but I've read the law. I've read the USA Patriot Act in the section that he's allegedly violated with his edicts. The USA Patriot Act expired on March the 15th, and he signed his first executive order on March the 12th, 3 days before the Patriot Act expired. And with his executive order, without any basis of, there was no scientific basis, there was no medical basis for what he was doing, and basically seizing all commerce and creating arbitrary lines, saying who's essential, who's not. This business is closed, that one's open. You can stand shoulder to shoulder at Walmart, but you can't go and get a haircut or go to the bar or do this, that, and the other thing. All of that stuff, in my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if you're versed on the Patriot Act, but seems to be in violation of the USA Patriot Act, which would make Governor Ned LaMont a domestic terrorist. And I'm wondering how or who do we go to? Do we need a special prosecutor? Do we need the FBI? Do we need the Department of Justice? Who do we go to? How do we begin having officials look into that rather than just discussing it amongst ourselves as the people? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, perhaps after we get past this election stuff, on what you think we could do and how to go about doing it.
Sure. I'll just say this quickly about Pennsylvania, and then we'll jump to that topic. We don't even have to go to my Facebook. I can just say it quickly. I think it's really interesting that all these, well, first, as you pointed out, this is happening in Democrat states. It's not happening anywhere else. You take states that are 4 or 5 times bigger than them like Florida and California. And, obviously, space-wise, New York is not as big, but the population, all of these states were done election night. And maybe a little trickle into the next day. But you have these states like Pennsylvania, one of the corruption meccas of America, besides Connecticut, and
perhaps even
done.
Chicago.
Yeah, they're not done. It's like, and these ballots show up overnight. There's the fact that in Michigan at 4 a.m., a Ferrari, a van, and a Chrysler 300 pull up with 138,000 ballots, 100% for Joe Biden.
Statistically impossible.
Impossible. And, the video, there's a woman who was there, and she spoke with a poll worker, and the guy was like, I could not believe every single one we pulled out, 100% for Biden. And so for these things to be happening in unmercifully corrupt state Democratic Party states is very telling, and I'll just go through these quickly. I get a lot of my information from the Justice Department. I think it's really important to, if you're going to use information, you got to be careful about the .coms, because there's a lot of, obviously, fake information out there. So I strictly use .govs and .orgs. It's the best way to go. So this publication Thursday, and I'll just read the titles because you'll be able to get the information from them. November 5th, 2020, from the Justice Department, Western District of New York. Postal worker arrested and charged with failing to deliver over 800 pieces of mail, which included absentee ballots. Okay, next one is September 25th, 2020, Eastern Justice Department, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia City Treasurer arrested and charged with multiple frauds, embezzlement, all money laundering. That's a city chair. Next one, September 24th. This one is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and the Luzerne County District, where they're having problems now. They recovered, what this says, election officials in Luzerne County have been cooperative. At this point, we can confirm that a small number of military ballots were discarded. Investigators have recovered 9 ballots, 7 of which were for Trump. And so I'm sure people will say, oh, it's just a few ballots. Okay, but that's just one instance, one person, one time. You get all these people doing it, and it's, I'll just say a few more. Congressman, or this is July 23rd, 2020. Michael Ozzie Myers, which is funny, that's his name, Michael Myers, a political consultant and former U.S. congressman, has been charged with 8 counts. 1 count of conspiracy to deprive people of their civil rights. Another one, conspiring to illegal votes, ballot stuffing. 2 counts of violating the Travel Act. It goes on and on. Bribery in favor of one candidate. So these people, that was in Pennsylvania. And this is the last one I'll say. There's a few more if people ever wanted to go to my wall. But this is May 21st, 2020, former Philadelphia judge of elections, convicted of conspiring to violate civil rights and bribery with respect to voter fraud. And so these are officials. Another one in Georgia, Mitzi Bickers, arraigned on federal charges for wire fraud, money laundering, federal obstruction. This is a city official, and it's these states, it's these officials, like the states that are having problems now in this election. And so they're acting, it's the last thing I'll say, they're acting like voter fraud is some foreign thing when these states wrote the book on voter fraud. And so I think it's really interesting. So, yeah.
It's shocking. It's unbecoming of officials in this once great republic that seems to have turned to the dark side. And it's terrifying, especially if you have children, especially if you're kind of powerless. You know, a lot of people aren't activists. Being an activist comes with a stigma. A lot of people aren't making the efforts that you do, and they just get their information from one place and they believe what they hear all over the television. And I think it's indicative of the population right now to become active and engage in our system of governance and engage, despite how disenfranchised they might feel or divided they might feel. They need to engage with this information and educate themselves so that we can begin talking about solutions instead of talking about each other all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and thank God for the Facebook block button. Okay. You know, it's like if people are giving you a hard time, you just block and then you move right along.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I am. I've had to block some trolls and things, but I like getting the opposing views. I think more Americans need to get adjusted to the idea that we need to talk about this stuff. I mean, there's so many instances, whether it's a holiday dinner or you're at a bar or you're in a club or you're just at a restaurant and everybody's no religion, no politics. Well, okay. Yeah. When do we talk about it then? When do we get to talk to each other if it's not at our own dinner table, if it's not during Thanksgiving, if it's not at the bar? Where and when do the people get to talk about the things that are changing and shaping their lives so dramatically and so rapidly? You know, the time is now, and we can no longer rely on corrupt officials and people who portray themselves as our leaders to do the right thing. They're not reliable. I think people like you should consider running for office. You should start in town council, work your way up into a state position, you know, start local, get up into a state position, and try to go all the way to the hill. You know, this country needs 10 million more people like you.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and many more people, I don't want to sound conceited, but like myself, activists. Yeah, we need activists. Sure. And activists are often mischaracterized, and there's a stigma that comes with the term. People, when you say activists, they think of Antifa, or they think of Black Lives Matter, or they think of, you know, violent sort of protest and just, you know, obnoxious people. And we're not. We're just Americans who can look at information and kind of rationalize it, and we're willing to engage our fellow citizens and talk about this stuff, but there's like a roadblock there all the time. You get conflicting reports on mainstream media like WTNH, our local station here, saying the exact opposite of what officials are saying. Now, most people don't know what the officials are saying because they're not reading it and searching out that information like you do, like I do, and like others do. They're just watching WTNH, and then they'll come onto Facebook and contest with you. They'll be in contention with us. And rather than kind of looking at the information and realizing, hey, wait a minute, maybe I ought to hit the brakes and review this stuff, they just sound off right away. They call you a lunatic or a Trumper, or you know, they got a name for everybody now. There's a name for everybody, and it creates a very big disconnect, and the crapshoot begins, if you will.
Absolutely. You know, I think there's and I'll just say this quick, but I think you make a really good point about having that conversation with people who disagree with you. And I really think there's two types of disagreement. There's the really mean, vile people that are just too negative for me, that we wouldn't benefit in that moment. And so when I've had people reach out and be really nasty, that's the situation I block if I can't after a few minutes. But in terms of people who disagree, those are the best kind of people. People who, the best experiences I've had have been with people, you know, it feels so much more fulfilling when you get someone who disagrees with you to listen. And that's the win, you know, and I've had those experiences where people have we just talked and it got so much, we both kind of, and so that's a really good point that you made.
There's concessions made on both sides.
Yeah.
Nobody really, even if you're looking at information and it is factual, what we can make out of that is not really known until we manifest it together. So I'm a big fan of Pyrrhonism. I don't like pretending to know, but I like learning. And,
yeah. Me too.
It's in those exchanges that we literally learn from one another. And I think that's been lost in our society for a very long time. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to set the political correctness aside and put down all of the icing and just, talk to each other raw and real and, get real and talk about these problems, put the information out there and figure out the solutions rather than fighting over something stupid that's irrelevant to the ultimate goal of what we're here for, is to preserve the republic, protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and secure a future for the kids in this country. Like, I feel horrible for the kids in this country.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And the parents, I don't have kids, but what's going on is getting me all riled up about, so I can only imagine what parents are going through.
We have 5 children here. Our 4 boys are named after the Kennedy brothers. We are very inspired by many events that occurred in the 60s. We're very much aligned with I think John Kennedy today and even Robert Kennedy today, they probably would be deemed right-wing radicals, even if they were carrying the very same principles and values and policies and advocating for those things as they were in the 60s. I think today they would just be, ridiculed and attacked, very much like our sitting president at this time. I viewed Donald Trump as the first real president since John Kennedy, and I know that's a powerful statement, and there's a lot to explain behind that. I won't have time to go into it tonight, but I think we've been left holding an empty bag since 1968 or 1963, really. Since the 60s. Yeah, we've been kind of, and if you kind of look at history and media and Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite and CBS and all these entities from back in the day, it seems that that's when they started being dishonest. That's when media became entertainment. It was like once Lee Harvey Oswald was shot on live television and they realized what that did for their ratings and their commercial sales and things like that, news was no longer objective. It became entertainment-based and drama and controversy, and the whole premise of media was lost. They used to protect us. The journalists, when they were genuine back then, used to inform and arouse and protect the American people. And now, like what happened today, you have every major media outlet in the United States declaring that Biden won the election, and that's not even an official statement. I mean, it hasn't even been officially, declared. So who is the New York Times to do this?
I dropped the remote. I was like, Mom, I couldn't believe that they, and they didn't, not even Fox, they didn't even put a little disclaimer like, well, these things are still being counted. But no, they just got right behind Biden. And I fell out of love with Fox today. I'm big fans of Laura and Hannity, and I'm only going to watch Fox for Levin on Sunday nights. But
he's great. He's great. I like I like Levin, and what's the other guy on there? Carlson. He's not so bad. He does some phenomenal work. Yeah, he does some phenomenal work, and it's hard to find a good. But the network itself, I've been very disappointed in for quite some time now.
For sure. In the media, speaking about Lamont, kind of segueing. The media around here, most media is corrupt, but the media here is terrible. And if you look, it's just full of lies. And when you look back to Lamont's history and his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather and his uncle, who was a full-on communist, monitored by the FBI, they owned the media, the Morgans, the miners. And so it makes sense that such a wealthy, powerful man would be, he would have a whole heritage involved in this state. And so, yeah, I'm always surprised. I still get surprised when I hear something on NBC or WFSB or all these papers that are supposed to be kind of independent. They're not.
Now, can you talk a little bit about LaMont, and I think even Chris Murphy's involved? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but like their wives have a stake in, these. Right. There's like all sorts of inside stuff going on where they're trying to persuade, encourage, or even seize manufacturing of certain businesses and make masks only, so that we don't have to import masks from China and stuff. It's basically almost like communism, where they're getting ready to seize production and tell these companies what they have to do, and those business dealings, if you will, or corrupt dealings, seem to be steered towards a financial gain of the governor's wife or the senator's wife, or Richard Blumenthal and all these people. As vague as that sounds, I've read multiple reports. It's just there's so much going on. I can't kind of fire from the hip and pull them out of my brain right now. Can you touch on some of that stuff and maybe bring some clarity to that sort of thing that's going on here? Thank you.
So the economic community, not that I'm a part of that, which I would love to be, but I read a lot of economics, and they call it self-dealing when you're, and it's not horribly uncommon, unfortunately, with the 1%. When your own interests as a public official, your personal and financial interests supersede your duty to the public, and you are engaging in whatever you're engaging at the benefit of yourself and at the expense of the governed. And so it is, I had no idea, of course, because I was not a corruption seeker-outer prior to February. I had no idea. Anne Lamott is one of the wealthiest women in the world. It was gauged that in, I think it was like 2010-ish, she was worth 300 million. Some say 800 million. And so, so she's so phenomenally wealthy. And her involvement in Sema4, aka Mount Sinai Genomics, and Joshua Gabal's involvement, the Department of, I just can't freaking believe that, basically the CFO of Connecticut. He's the operation runner, Joshua Gabal. He's the commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services. His stake in Anne Lamont, he was CEO in one of Anne Lamont's companies, and now he's an executive in Thermo Fisher. So
right, a conflict of interest to the greatest degree. And
there are very specific, it's not just the Patriot Act we have violations of. There's very specific antitrust laws, the Clayton Act, the Sherman Act, things that have been decided for decades that you can and cannot do, monopoly laws.
The Logan Act.
They don't care. So every time, and for your viewers, like, it's financially beneficial for Lamont to keep the state closed, because every time a test gets run, a COVID test gets run at Sema4, his wife gets a cut. His wife's company, Oak Healthcare and FinTech, gets a cut. And so they need COVID to be talked about on television because they're getting disgustingly rich. And not just them. We got a lot of legislative members, Liz Linehan, Matt Ritter, who's about to be the Speaker of the House, and his wife, his mother, is the new Supreme Court judge, Lamont's shoo-in. The Ritters are a dynasty, and they're trying to change the vaccine laws in this state. And so for them to have such financial interest in the vaccine market, in the test market, it's really unbelievable.
It's terrifying. the people are not going to go for this whole mandatory vaccine thing at all. There's already a tremendous backlash against it. I'm certainly
there should be.
Yeah, we're certainly not as parents going to oblige that or engage that. And what I fear is they've got such a grip on this state, and this is such a gripping machine over the entire nation that there's really going to be, if it gets to that point, it's going to be extremely difficult for parents like myself and my wife and our kids to live in society freely, because there's going to be an apparatus that says, oh, you weren't vaccinated. Oh, you can't shop here now. Oh, you can't go to the DMV this way. Or, oh, it's going to be harder and harder to participate in society, as far as I can tell. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And of course, I have a little personal example, which is not even close to what parents and kids face. But I decided I'm kind of a nerd about law. I love tax law. And
that's fantastic.
I just like it. And there's so much to read. And so about a couple months ago, I started reading a ton about tax law. And after that few week period of binging on tax law, I realized, you know what? I'm not going to pay my car taxes anymore, because all that I read, it just totally invalidated everything I thought taxation was. And now, of course, I don't own a business or anything like that. So it's easier for me to say no to taxes anymore. And, but when you think about it, so, okay, I'm not paying those taxes anymore, but when I go to register my car and, I have to do it every couple years or every year, that will be hot. That I won't be able to, because I didn't pay my taxes.
Right. They're going to make your life a living hell. They're going to screw at your life and make it a living hell. That's almost as bad as the private insurance companies and that sort of financial relationship they're in with the bureaucracy that is the Department of Motor Vehicles. You got somebody in a financial hardship. Perhaps there was an accident. Perhaps there was a death in the family. Who knows what the circumstance could be? They have an insurance lapse, and rather than the insurance company calling their client and saying, hey, what's going on? Can we work with you? We want to keep this relationship going. We understand you're in a hardship. We'll work with you. They call the DMV, and the DMV just unregisters your car. And you might even be driving around for a couple, 3 days before you get notice of that through the snail mail, carried by USPS. And now you get pulled over, your car gets towed, or whatever the circumstance could be. And all you're trying to do is get to work to maintain your living and keep that food on your table. Rather than working with you, you're punished. The state punishes you. The bureaucracy punishes you. And then you have to pay fines. Like, you have to pay extra to get your registration back up and running. And that's not helpful, especially if you're already burdened financially. It's a total counterproductive.
Not to mention unconstitutional.
You got it.
I'm a big fan of the Constitution. I have a little pocket Constitution from the Cato Institute. It's beautiful, beautiful document.
I have a number of ththose. Yes, I have a number of those.
And you read through it, and it's like, well, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. But it's and you think about the masks, okay, and you think about these fines, these astronomical fines. You can't do that according to the Constitution. This is what a great rouse that the Constitution state is the great corrupter of the Constitution. We still live under the fundamental orders of 1639. And it's wild. Connecticut is the fifth oldest state in America. So they've had a while. I think we received statehood in 1710, I think. So we've been working at this corruption for a while. And I was so, it surprises me that I guess it doesn't surprise me, but such oligarchs run this state. And
it is an oligarchy. What a great word to use. Yeah, you got it. It is.
Yeah.
It is called extortion, Mr. McAndrew. I appreciate that comment, sir.
Yeah.
The DMV absolutely extorts us. One thing I found funny is I did a job for a gentleman out of Arizona, and he showed me his license, and the license in Arizona is valid for like 42 years or 44 years, whereas here in Connecticut, I think you got to renew your license once every 4 years, I think. And that's just to get us in to pay for this bureaucracy. Like, the DMV is an unelected bureaucracy, and as far as I know, according to the Constitution and laws and things, it really has no authority over any of us.
No, and that's a great point about, so like all these laws that we are experiencing under King Ned,
The Führer, yeah, the Führer.
They're illegal. These things that we are, people are handing over their businesses. They're just walking off the cliff, and they're not for literally nothing. They are
blind. They're like racehorses with blinders on, and they just run straight for the cliff, and they think that's what they have to do because that's what the television's telling them they have to do. That's what everybody says they have to do.
Someone could open up their business full capacity. Churches can open up full capacity. There is no legal requirement, he's making this stuff up as he goes. And so, but people are afraid. They are afraid that people won't come or they'll be shunned or whatever. But if it was me and my business was about to go under, I would hope I would say, okay, I'm opening it up. What's the worst that could happen? You're going to lose your business anyways. And people would be really surprised to find out that they cannot. Police enforce the law. These are not laws.
That's right. You can't even say you're out in the public and you're not wearing a mask, and a Karen, if you will, calls and freaks out, and the police come out to identify you and try to enforce the governor's order. Like, again, as you stated, it's not a law, it's an executive order. If that were me, I would refuse to ID because I haven't committed a crime. I'm not in violation of any statute or law, and according to the laws in Connecticut, I'm not required to ID unless I am in violation of a statute or law, or I've committed a crime. So I would refuse to ID. They wouldn't be able to cite me with any sort of ticket. I wouldn't, or maybe it would escalate. Maybe they would arrest me for refusing to ID and accept the citation, things like that. In which case, I would bring that all the way up to trial. I would fight it until I'm blue in the face. And unfortunately, I don't think there are many citizens in this state and elsewhere in the country that would do that. And I think that's why we're losing this battle. Yeah. I think we all need to kind of talk and get on the same page and start putting our government in check.
It's weird. We all want the same things. Like I want the same things as the people on the left do. Obviously not that small sect of disturbed people, but most people who are Democrats, they don't know the real history of the Democrats. They don't know how corrupt the old Democrats were. So they think they're part of the party of the people, not the party of the KKK. And so I don't fault them for that. They want the same things we do, security, family, happiness, freedom. They think, they don't realize it's their party that is doing
right. They've been misguided. They've been tricked. It's like they're in a magic show and they're allowing themselves to be tricked rather than going, wait, let's watch what he's doing with his right hand and see where that coin goes and figure it all out. They're not willing to accept that their years or decades of believing in something that's actually so the betrayal.
It's and all people have to put down the Politico and the factcheck.org and the all of these New York Times, all these, like, go look I love the Library of Congress website, loc.gov, and you can find all of these records of anything government related in these very reputable, the National Archives, things like that. And people don't know that Democrats fought to block the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. They don't know that they fought tooth and nail against the suffragettes. They don't know that the 1963 Civil Rights Bill, that was the second civil rights bill. The first one was passed by the anti-slavery party Republicans 100 years prior.
That's
so
right.
People don't know their history. And so, yeah, and I think that's something that, because knowledge is power.
And we've gotten even further from that really important history over the last 12 years. In fact, we're tearing down our monuments. We're defacing that history publicly. We're banning books in schools. We're banning videos on YouTube, and Google's censoring people left and right. It's terrifying.
It's kind of like, so I think there's been around 300 statues that have been defaced and destroyed since the start of all of this. Maybe it may be higher now. But when you see the list of these, when you look at these statues, like they're burning and spray painting Frederick Douglass, the father of the civil rights movement. It
makes no sense. And that's the testament to the degree of ignorance, which is so profound today.
Right.
So, I mean, we do have an incredible uphill battle to fight, and we have to find a creative, sort of peaceful way to reach these people and not make them turn to a defensive posture. Like, we don't want to tell people they're wrong, because then they disconnect. We have to find a creative way to reach them and not make them feel like they're dumb or they're wrong or they're ignorant. We have to just tell them that there's more to this picture than they're allowing their eyes to see. And I think if we can find a way to do that, we can really create an engine of unity for a change, and the people can actually get together and start as a collective for a change, directing our voice at the appropriate officials. And with that said, I'd like to ask you how do you suppose we can go after Ned LaMont, these families, these officials that are literally just living a giant conflict of interest and stealing our money, pretty much, and stealing our livelihoods and arbitrarily drawing lines to restrict our travel, our businesses, our growth, commerce, all of it. How do we go about bringing justice to the people and putting these people in prison? Like, what do you think we should do? What entities should we contact first? Do we write letters? Do we make phone calls? What can we do?
So I have to kind of adjust the plan a little after this whole election thing, because if you have a corrupt person in the White House, it makes things more, you're going to have corrupt, all those,
right. The fish.
So it'll be a lot harder than it would have been with Mr. Trump, President Trump. And so I really, because you can write, I've written a lot of letters and I made a lot of calls, and I've spoken with the FBI. I've written to Barr, and so I know they're busy, but it's also, we're in a real challenge because we have the big wigs right in our state, like the big bad, the wealthiest and most connected people in a lot of the world. And so that's a different, it kind of makes it more difficult. So I think that really one of the few ways at the moment, because I've been writing letters for a year and haven't got too many places with it, at least in government response, hitting them where it makes them most uncomfortable. Like, it's one thing to go picket outside of, which is so important, but or go demonstrate outside the Capitol building. It's another to go to Greenwich and do it in front of his neighbors.
Right. Public shaming almost.
Yes, they do it to us, and it's not like that's not ideal, but of course not, But they're terrible people, so I forgive myself a little on it, But going, catching them in their vulnerable states, and it makes me sound like such a bad person, but embarrassing them, pushing, the intention is not to embarrass, but they are invading our lives so much. They need to know what it feels like. And of course the 1% thinks differently, so it would probably fall on deaf ears, but challenging them where they're not ready for you to challenge them in their home space, and not just Ned LaMont's, all these corrupt legislators invading their space, and that's,
I agree. I think that would be very effective, and it's something that we haven't really done much of, or
I
at
know.
all.
We haven't really considered that yet, and it's like they live in our lives. They're on every time we go outside, every time we go to a store. They're in our lives because we have to wear that mask because of them. We have to close our businesses. Our children can't get educated because of them. So they live in our lives all day, every day. Okay, you want to see how it feels? So I think that's something that could be effective. But
I agree 100%. Now, in the recent weeks, I've joined a phenomenal group of individuals from around the nation. Myself and 21 other folks, activists, if you will, have put our minds together and created what is called Activism News Network. We are featured on Roku, and I believe we're going to be on Google and Apple Play and all that stuff in the very near future. One of the things that we focus on is obviously civil rights and civil liberties, things like that. I'm wondering if perhaps you'd be interested in helping us teach some.
Yes, whatever.
Excellent.
Whatever the question is.
Yeah, we want to hold workshops, if you will. We want to educate the people directly, and we need really sharp minds who, like you, who are well versed in all this stuff. And articulate, you can properly articulate the message and be, I think people listen when you talk because you're so charismatic and informative. You hit the nail on the head. So you do it in your writing, and you've done it here tonight on this video. I think the group would be pleased to have you. And after tonight's show, we've got a couple minutes left here. After tonight's show, I'll go ahead and send some contact information over to you, and you can get in touch with these very fine folks who are diligently working just as hard as you and seeking the right solutions to bring a better future for this country and for our kids and for the world, for that matter. So I think these guys are going to love to have you, and I think you're going to be very happy, working with us. You're going to be a very critical gear in all of this, and I'm pleased to know that you're interested. It's huge. This is all huge.
Absolutely. Because it starts small. MLK was just one guy, and then things. It's so important, and the work that you do, and it doesn't have to be such a big deal. Like we can all just talk to each other.
Exactly.
Right? Like it doesn't have to be this civil warrior thing. Like it's just. So yeah, I think it's so important what you do, and I'm so grateful for the invitation.
We are honored to have you here, and I'm totally overwhelmed. I'm almost at a loss for words, which is kind of odd. I love talking. I hope the viewers like listening as much as I like to talk. But tonight, I'm just so overwhelmed with your presence and the knowledge that you can help convey to the people, and how important it is. It actually makes me a little nervous, because this is a big deal, and you're a big deal.
We're excited.
Yes, we are very excited here. We're going to have to get together again. Perhaps we might be able to do this once a week, and we can kind of keep people up to date on, what's coming into fruition throughout, the 5 days a week. Maybe we could do this every Sunday or every Saturday or something like that at the end of the news week, and just keep the people informed in a very impartial and fair way, and provide in-depth, coverage and analysis to these various subjects and topics that are absolutely plaguing America and affecting our lives today. It would be outstanding to be able to do that with you.
Oh, that would be, this is what I'm doing anyways. I
you
love
got it. Right, yeah.
I would love to.
Well, that's fantastic. And, just for the sake of time, I do want to cut this off at an hour. Yeah, I think it'll help our views in the long run. And we'll just continue to do these panel discussions. I can bring some other folks on in the future and introduce you to some very fine folks that I know you would be ecstatic to meet. And we'll basically create a big, effective think tank. We'll have a machine of our own in no time. And we're going to be powerful unto ourselves. We're going to empower each other, and we're going to find the solutions, and we're going to do it with the best and brightest minds around this country, perhaps even from around the world. And we're going to do what needs to be done, because if we don't do it, who else is going to,
Who's that?
You got it. So, Miss Eloise, I have to thank you so much.
Thank you to your viewers, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate
maybe
it.
we'll stick around another 5 minutes. Do any of the viewers have any questions for Victoria? Does anyone have anything that they want to say or anything they want to talk about? Now's your chance. We're going to give you a couple 3 minutes of the floor, and we'll go ahead and ask her your questions here from the comment section. So we'll give the viewers a minute here. We'll see what comes up.
Sorry, my cat is making a lot of noise over here. So if you hear
your cat's doing just fine, just fine. So again, folks, if you're just joining or you haven't heard, check out Activism News Network. We're on Roku. We've got a great team of folks from around the country diligently working for you and for the independence of the people in this country. We're defending the Constitution. You can check out ANN at www.activismnewsnetwork.com. I believe it's essentially sponsored, if you will. I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but it's essentially sponsored by Expanding Freedom Inc. That's the letter X and then Panding, Panding Inc. .org. You can check out the website there. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. Started by or created by one of our finest members, Mr. Rogue Nation. He goes by Majorly Awesome, formerly known as Captain Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and get you his contact information this evening. I'll send that over to your email. You guys can start discussing workshops and your involvement in them. Let's see. Do we got anything coming up? You're welcome, Mr. McCormick. Wrights, nice to see you, buddy. Hoosier, nice to see you. We've got Mr. Keith. Let's see. No one's got any questions for Miss Eloise here? We got a couple minutes for you guys. Let's see. June Harvey, thanks for being here. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, Mr. Keith. Thanks for your compliment, sir. We appreciate that. We're here for you, and we're here to make a better future. So thanks for joining us. Folks, please hit that like button. Smash that like button for me. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Share the link to this video. Share a link to my channel. Help spread this information out there, because it's very important that we come together at a discussion table and figure out what we're going to do going forward. Here, we got something here. Let's just...
you're welcome, Graham. Graham said thank you. You're so welcome, Graham.
Let's see. How could President Joe Biden be a president when they have to finish the counts? Right. Yeah, there's a bunch of controversy. We can get together next week and go a little further into this election fiasco and what we can expect come December. I'm really interested in seeing what the news will bring on Monday when the prosecution starts and all this stuff, starts manifesting. Maybe we'll get together mid next week, rather than waiting for the weekend. It depends on what the news cycle brings. Mr. Power, thanks for being here. Mr. Fedone, thanks for your participation, sir. Everybody, have yourselves a wonderful night. Miss Eloise, thank you so much. I'll be in touch in just a few minutes. And that's it for us, folks. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.